All right, back. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's go on with prosocial behavior. We finished talking about antisocial behavior. Antisocial behavior, again, is any behavior that goes against the grain of society or that hurts or denigrates members of that society. In contrast, prosocial behavior is pretty much the opposite, doing behavior that goes with the grain of society or helping or aiding members of that society. So what is prosocial behavior? Prosocial behavior is defined as doing something that is good for other people or for society as a whole. Makes sense. Prosocial behavior includes behaviors that respect others or allow society to operate. Obeying the rules, conforming to socially accepted standards of proper behavior, and cooperating with others are important forms of prosocial behavior. Helping, which is the quintessential form of prosocial behavior, is actually something of a luxury. Heroic acts are impressive and memorable, but they are, of course, pretty rare. That's why we kind of tend to look up to people who do heroic things, because they are so rare. It's not a common thing for people to risk their lives for other people, or to really go out of their way, especially if it puts them in some kind of harm. That's why we look up to police officers and people in the military and things like that, because they are behaving so selflessly, and they are risking so much for people who they don't know or who can't directly benefit them in return. Society and culture can still bring immense benefits if people do not perform altruistic, self-sacrificing acts of helping. However, if no one follows the rules, society will fall apart and chaos will reign. Again, in order for a group or a society to function, members in that group or that society have to agree to follow the rules, have to agree to abide by the bounds and constraints of the laws or of the norms that are present in that group. If you join a study group or whatever, and part of the requirements is that you contribute 1 page of notes, and you continuously do not contribute your page, your membership or your continuing benefit of being in that group are at jeopardy. You can't continuously take and enjoy the benefits of membership in a society and not do your part to contribute. Other members of that society will not like that. You'll be, you're a mooch, and we don't like mooches. we don't want to, keep doing our part, and other people who don't contribute or who don't do their part to aid or benefit the society as a whole are still receiving the same benefits. That is not fair. That is not right, and so we tend to kind of ostracize people in the group who do not do that, and their actual standing and their potential membership in the group is in jeopardy. So it's a kind of almost counterintuitive that they are doing that, getting the benefits in the short term without ensuring their own long-term success. The rule of law refers to when members of a society respect and follow the rules. A society in which people respect and follow the rules is said to have an effective rule of law. Rule of law basically is what's a good word for it? It's kind of the marker of how successful a society is. Most societies, if no one follows the rules, then the society has zero rule of law, and it's no longer really a society, because people are just doing what they want when they want to do it. And a society or a group that has an effective rule of law is marked by a high conformity to the norms or the laws or the rules of that group or that society. If it has a high degree of numbers of members who follow the rules, who contribute, then that's a very successful society. A society whose rule of law is not very good is not in a place to continue operations very much. You can think of it as kind of a business who keeps a good eye on their bottom line, and who manages things properly, and who all of the employees are doing what they're supposed to do, and that business will probably be okay. But a business who doesn't really pay attention to norms, or doesn't pay attention to their money, or doesn't pay attention to how their employees are doing, that business is probably going to be in a lot of trouble. So you can think of this applies to any society or any group or any collection of people out there. You have to have an effective rule of law. You have to have an effective majority of people who contribute and who follow the rules, and who actually desire to have the group succeed, or there's really no point. There's no central thrust for the group to continue to evolve. There's a positive correlation between happiness and rule of law across a number of different societies. The more effective and the more successful a society is, the happier each person in that society or that group usually are. Public circumstances generally promote prosocial behavior, and that one important reason for generous helping is to make or sustain a good impression on anyone who may be observing your quote-unquote selfless acts. Therefore, doing prosocial things without recognition is less beneficial than doing them for their own right. We don't go out of our way to help other people for free. We want some kind of recognition. We want some kind of notice, some kind of payoff for our good deeds. Otherwise, we are putting ourselves at risk for the benefit of someone else. And if that someone else doesn't kind of keep tabs and doesn't seem to kind of repay that debt and level that balance and restore that synchronicity, then we are being taken advantage of, and we don't like that. So we are going to be much happier in societies where that is established, that everything in balance, and that goes back to the level of involvement or commitment you have in a society, or the level of involvement or commitment you have with this other person. You're going to be much more likely to not be so nitpicky on whether or not you have a return on your investment. If there's you're going to be much more likely to forgive doing something without repayment for your child than you will for some stranger that you bump into in the line at Best Buy. Most people, if you do something for someone else, you deserve to have either payment or some kind of other compensation. And we're going to talk about that when we get here into reciprocity here in just a little bit. But there has to be some kind of norm of, if I do something for you, then you are going to do something for me. Otherwise, that opens yourself up to being taken advantage of, and moochers and all the other stuff that we've been talking about. Self-interest dictates acting prosocially if it helps one belong to the group, which is one reason why prosocial behavior increases when others are watching. We're going to be much nicer to other people when the cameras are on. Think about like a politician or something. They're not going to say how they truly feel to the cameras, and they're not going to really respond in a way that might reflect their true nature, because they don't want to jeopardize their membership in that group. So you're going to be much nicer, you're going to be much more helpful when you have an audience, because again, you not only want that to help solidify and help increase your placement within that group, you're also going to make sure that other people know that you are a valued member of that group, and they're going to want to keep you around for a while. Reciprocity is defined as the obligation to return in kind. What another has done for us, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Reciprocity norms are found in all cultures of the world. This is kind of exactly what we've been talking about. If I do something for you, and we aren't closely related, or we aren't in the same boat, then I expect you to do something for me. I have no problem helping people, but if people don't appreciate it, or don't say thank you, or don't respond in kind, or don't even realize what I've done, then that's going to make me less likely to want to help that person again in the future. That's just kind of how it works. There's a trade-off. We don't want to be taken advantage of, but we also want to help kind of solidify our place in the group. And you can think about shows like Survivor, where, the more you do for the group, the better off you are, up until a certain point where you can't, continue to benefit other people at the expense of your own standing. So you can, share your food and share all of your other resources, but again, you can't give it all away. Otherwise, people will start to take advantage of that, and they might not, be likely to help you back. Not everyone may be as generous as you are. And so, helping other people kind of has a risk-reward type payoff. But again, we're going to be much more willing to help and provide for those with whom we have a strong bond or a strong connection. You're going to be much more likely to help people in your family than you will complete strangers, because again, the likelihood that they will help you in your time of need, should you ever need it, and the likelihood that they will repay that, or they will, engage in this norm of reciprocity, is much higher than a complete stranger who is not personally invested in your success or failure. If reciprocity is expected and you do something for someone else and they don't return the favor, you're likely to be upset or offended, and less likely to do something for that person in the future. Again, going back to mooching, if you help someone else and they just take advantage of you and they don't do anything in return, you get no benefit from helping them whatsoever, you're not gonna really have a strong burning desire to help them out again. Helping someone or refusing to help has an impact on one's reputation within the group. Again, think about Survivor and getting to that final episode or whatever. The more helpful you are to the group, the better it is for the group to keep you around. People who hoard their resources, although they might ensure their own personal individual success, their position within the group is jeopardized, and so they might be kicked out of the group. And eventually you're going to run out of resources and you're going to need the help and benefit of other people. But you have already kind of shot yourself in the foot, and you've already, burned that bridge. So now you're on your own. You wanted to, do for only you. Well, now you got it. But again, there's going to be that kind of risk reward. How much do you want to give up to help other people on the off chance that you might need their help yourself? It's up to you. People's willingness to request or accept help often depends on whether they can pay the helper back. If they don't think they can return the favor, they are less willing to let someone help them. Again, this all goes back to that norm of reciprocity. And, if a stranger walks up to you and offers to pay off your car, you're going to wonder, what the hell? What are you getting out of this? But if your mom or your significant other or something like that, you're going to be less likely to kind of run that through your internal gauge, because again, the opportunity to pay that person back, or to not really pay them back, but the opportunity to kind of restore that balance to where you don't feel like you owe them anymore, is much higher. Norms or standards and established by society tell its members what type of behavior are typical and expected. What is considered normal behavior? What are the rules? What is the what's expected of you? Two types of norms are equity and equality. Equity is the idea that each person receives benefits in proportion to what he or she contributes. So, if you contribute 50% of the resources, you should receive 50% of the rewards. That sounds fair to a lot of people. And, a lot of people kind of live their life. I'm going to take what in proportion to what I give. That can work up to a point, but eventually you're going to run into a thing where you're not able to contribute as much. And, you might need resources, and if you're not able to contribute at all, then you get no resources whatsoever. So yeah, when you're on top, equity norms are great. Our society today is run strict, pretty highly on norms like equity, where the benefits you receive are going to be in congruence with the benefits that you put together, that you contribute. People who have more money get more benefits. But again, if they were to lose everything, then they would still need benefits, and they would not be able to get any, because these equity norms that they were preaching while they were on top, now that they are on bottom, don't really help them all that much. So again, equity norms are great when you have a lot of resources and a lot of things to offer and contribute, because obviously the more that you contribute, the more that you are going to get. But if you have very little to contribute, then you might be more in line with something like an equality norm, where the idea that everyone gets the same amount regardless of what he or she contributes. Because, although you may be very, very good in math, you might suck at writing papers. So if you join a study group, when the math test comes around, you might have to pull a great deal of the weight because you're the math god in the group, and that's fine. You pull the most amount of weight, you should get the most amount of benefit according to equity norms. If there's 50 points, 50 extra credit points on your next exam, and you guys divide up those points how you see fit. If I do 50% of the work, then I should get 25 extra points. That's an equity norm, and the rest of the 10 members of the group, you guys can split up the remaining 25 points. But that may work, when we're talking about something that, I'm good at. If we go down to equality norms, if there are, 10 members of the group and we each, there are 50 points up for grabs, then each of us get 5 points, no matter how much we contribute. So when I'm on top and we're doing the math portion, and, I'm doing 50% of the work, then I only get five points. Well, that doesn't really seem fair when I'm contributing the most. But when we get to the history or the English part where I suck at that, then one of the other members might have to step up to the plate and do the majority of the work, and I don't do nearly as much, or I may not do anything at all, but I still get my 5 points. That equality and equity norms, it's kind of a give and take. Depending on where you are, where your placement is on the group, is going to depend on which of these two norms are most beneficial to you. Affirmative action, don't worry about that. Forgiveness refers to ceasing to feel angry toward or seek retribution against someone who has wronged you. This kind of goes back to reciprocity. Reciprocity not only talks about the beneficial side of things, it can also talk about, revenge. If you do something bad to me, you now owe me a debt. I get to either do something bad to you, or you have to do something to kind of reset that balance. You sleep with my wife, guess what? I get to now sleep with yours. That's restoring balance. Or you have to, proffer some other form of repayment or something to kind of set the record straight and get us back on the same page, so we're good now. But forgiveness, if you do something wrong to me, then I will forgive you. I will relinquish you from having to repay that debt or having to, equal out the scales. You no longer have to feel guilty because I forgive you. I release you from that obligation of reciprocity. According to the theories of fairness, reciprocity, and equity, if someone does something bad to you, that person owes you a kind of debt. We just talked about that. Forgiveness in that context involves releasing the person from that obligation. Forgiveness can help heal a damaged relationship and enable people to go on living and working together. The more strongly someone is committed to a particular relationship, the more likely one is to forgive an offense by the other partner. Again, we kind of talked about this. You're going to be much more likely to overlook social slights by people you are close to than people you are not. It is fairly obvious that being forgiven is beneficial to the person who did something wrong, because that person no longer needs to feel guilty or owes a debt to the one who has been hurt. However, forgiveness also has great benefits for the forgivers. They report better physical and mental health than victims who hold grudges. So keeping all this inside and, keeping a running mental tab of everyone who's ever wronged you and, how much they owe you and all of that, you can carry that around with you if you want to, but it's not a good way to live your life, holding grudges and keeping tabs on, what you've done for everyone else and people who have and haven't repaid you, and you carry it around in your little green notebook and write down every slight that anyone's ever done for you, and that's a lot of weight and baggage to carry around. Just let it go. Not everyone is going to be able to repay you for every single thing that they do. People are going to screw up. And if you keep track of that and you follow that around and you want your revenge for every single small little slight that anyone's ever done for you, obviously you can see that that's just not a good way to live. Just let it go. It's causing you more harm than keeping track of the repayment would do you any good. So forgiveness is kind of a dual benefit type of relationship. You're helping the other person because they no longer have to worry about repaying you or keeping that in line. And you also benefit because you are no longer having to carry around the weight of what everyone owes you. What are some barriers to forgiveness? One is the severity of the offense. The worse the person treated you, the harder it is to forgive. So it's going to be much easier to forgive a little small social slight than it is, something very, very major. Another is a low commitment to the relationship. Forgiving is making a generous offer to renounce anger and retribution as a way of helping to repair the relationship. People are mainly willing to do this for relationships that they care about. Again, we've kind of talked about, how close you are to the other person. You're going to be much more likely to forgive that person than you are some stranger that you have nothing vested in. Apologies also help elicit forgiveness. When someone has wronged you and fails to apologize, you are much less likely to forgive that person than if they had offered an apology or expressed remorse. So if your relationship with them matters enough to them for them to apologize and feel sorry that, damaging this relationship has, bothers you, we want to know that we are important enough for them to make the attempt to repair the damage. If someone does something bad to you and doesn't even bother to apologize, then obviously we didn't mean as much to them as we thought we did, and why make the effort to attempt to heal that relationship? If you don't care about fixing your relationship with me, then I don't care about fixing my relationship with you, that type thing. Two motives: altruism and egoism. There are two theories as to why people help others. The first is that people are altruistic. That is, they provide help as a result of an unselfish concern for others. They seek to increase another's welfare, and they expect nothing in return. True altruism is very difficult to define. I would say that true altruism in its purest form does not exist because, again, you're going to always get something in return, even if you forgive someone anonymously.